Hello everyone and welcome back to Buff's Vintage Bikes. So this is going to be part 5 of the Colnago Super build, and in this video I'm going to cover the Campagnolo pedals, the ICS gear levers, and what else are we doing? We're doing the Campagnolo brake calipers as well. So the last video, part 4, I did those super record cranks. Man, those things popped. They looked amazing, if I may say so myself. Really pleased with them. I'm hoping the brake calipers turn out as well, although I won't be taking them back to base to polish because they have an anodized coating on them, but I'm pretty sure we're going to get them looking good. I've got a set of brake blocks that are coming over from Italy for those brake calipers as well, so we'll be waiting on those. And yeah, let's get right into it. Thanks for joining me again. So we'll start off this video with the restoration of these levers. These are particularly interesting because they are ICS levers. If you look carefully, you can see there's an ICS logo there and an ICS logo over there. So what was ICS? So the lever itself is Campagnolo, but ICS was a company called Italcicli Systems that were based in Zurich in Switzerland. And besides building sort of top-end bikes for wealthy individuals, they also used to take the Campagnolo Super record group set and they used to modify it to better improve the function of it. So you can't really improve the function of a lever like this, so all they did was they did a leather inlay on this just to make it look different. So rather unusual to see them on a bike, fairly rare as well. Unfortunately, this bike's only got these levers, not the entire reworked rear derailleur as well, which they used to do. So I'd love to know where the original owner got hold of these. It would be an interesting story. Nice to eventually see a pair in the flesh. First time I've actually seen a pair up close, so wonderful to work on. Not much work required on them, obviously, just a good cleanup. They're in fairly good nick. So I've basically just given everything a wipe down with a cloth and it's cleaned up really nicely. I don't even have any polish on the chrome. Just one tip I can give you is these are really useful to have in a garage. Your standard earbud, and they allow you to get into those hard to reach places. So here, for example, where the cable goes in on the lever, you can see the dirt that you're able to get out of there. So many products around the house can be utilized successfully when you're doing your restorations as well. I'm forever looking out for things that will make life just a little bit easier. The condition of these levers is still very good. That chrome is good. One or two small little chips off the top there. You can see that. But nothing that distracts from that lever's beauty at all. So I'm just going to give it all a light coating of grease and assemble them again. I'm such a geek when it comes to bicycle parts. I mean, look at the detail in this lever. That Campagnolo etching in the spacer and the top nut. Just incredible. There's no substitute for quality. Beautiful piece. Moving on to the brake calipers. It looks like the front caliper is a bit worse than the rear caliper, so we'll take a look at it. You can see we got a bit of rust on the nut here. Rust on all these chrome bits as well. Pretty all around. A little bit of rust on the top here. The brake blocks are getting replaced, so I'm not going to be worried too much about them. So I still think this will clean up pretty well, and I'm going to use the method with aluminium foil and WD-40 to get rid of this rust. And the parts that are quite bad, I'm going to drop in a solution of vapor rust for 48 hours. Definitely this cap nut And this lever is actually in way better condition. This one will clean up really easy. So that's the front brake lever stripped apart. Sorry, brake caliper. Always a good idea when you're stripping a caliper is to pull it apart, put everything down in a sequence, starting from your first nut that you've taken off, and then the subsequent nuts and washers after that, so that you know exactly how to reassemble it. And of course, a good idea to leave the other one intact, so that if you do get stuck anywhere, you can always go back to it for reference. So these are the little parts that I've left in the vapor rust solution, actually for 24 hours. I've just taken them out and I've given them a rub down with a cloth. I mean, this adjuster has cleaned up beautifully, as to that little nut. No more rust on them. These are a little bit dull, but after wiping them down, I actually used a fine Scotch-Brite pad. Sorry if I zoom out a bit. That's what the pad looked like that I used. That nut cleaned up lovely. So too that. It's just this cap nut that's looking a bit dull. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a shot of WD-40 and I'm going to rub it with that Scotch-Brite pad. And I'm going to see what we can get it to look like. Okay, so that's after rubbing it with the Scotch-Brite pad. You still see it's got some pitting. Let's put it on the polishing wheel and see if we can get it looking better. Okay, so that's it. Same little cap nut that looked absolutely terrible. Excuse my hands looking terrible from the polish. But cleaned up lovely. So while assembling this caliper, I thought I'd explain this just in case someone has doubts on it. So when you are putting your caliper levers together, your washers in between, in this instance I've used a really light coating of grease, but you can use a high viscosity oil as well between these washers. I've left the spring loose, and then when you put your adjusting nut on, which is this nut, turns down, this rod or shaft is fixed. This is your adjustment that determines the pressure on your levers, on these levers. So it's often best to do this adjustment with the spring off, because you have a better feel for what's going on over here. So the adjustment, the cap nut goes on afterwards, and then the adjustment nut locks against the cap nut. That's the lock on it. So when you do that, make sure you're testing these things with the spring off, because you got a better feel for how tight these two arms are. And you want no movement. If you see that, there's movement on it there. You don't want that movement on that lever at all, because when you're braking, it's going to pick up a brake shudder and do this, and you're going to get wear and tear against it. So make sure that that cap is adjusted, that nut is adjusted well, and you still have free movement in your two arms between it after you've snugged them up. Right, so I've snugged these two nuts up against one another. Sorry, those two. Now when I rotate this shaft, notice how the two nuts move together, showing they've locked together, and I've got free rotation of the shaft, meaning that it's not so tight that anything is binding. These two arms moving freely against one another, and if I wiggle them, I've got no movement of these two arms. So zero play between those 2 points over there. And once I've got that right, I can then add in my springs, and I can be confident that I'll have free movement of those two arms. and a good working caliper. Okay, so that's the front caliper all cleaned up. See the rear one still there waiting to be done. So you can see those rust, that e-vapor rust did a wonderful job of getting rid of the worst of the rust. Very few spots on it now. That cap nut cleaned up lovely. Bit of rust at the top here, cleaned up really nicely. I've removed the brake blocks in preparation for the new brake shoes to when they arrive, or the brake blocks. See the engraving of the Campagnolo logos even on the brake block holders. So lovely detail, looking good. Time for the next one. Same process. I'm just expecting this one to clean up a lot easier. Rightio, moving along swiftly. We're on to the pedals. A lovely set of Christoph toe clips in here. Christoph strap just on the one. The other one's got the strap missing. So we'll look at replacing those. And Campagnolo pedals. I'm actually not sure what model these are. Are they record? If you know, give me a shout in the comments. Not in bad nick at all. Not too much wear and tear on them for a set of pedals. You can obviously see that they've got some wear along the top there, which is to be expected, of course. But a little bit banged up on the corners. I'll look at straightening that up a bit. If you look at it from that angle, you can see it's a bit twisted. That shouldn't be a problem to sort out. And this fascinates me. Smooth as butter. Absolutely no play. I wouldn't even have to open these up and service them. They're that good. This one's exactly the same. Smooth, smooth. 40 years later, 40 years plus probably. I very much doubt these pedals have ever been opened. And still running like the day they left the factory. So I'm going to strip them apart, give them a clean up and a polish, and we'll see what we get them looking like. So just a heads up, if you're working on these Campagnolo pedals, this cap is plastic. Don't go getting all ham-fisted and squeezing it and try to get it loose. It shouldn't be on too tight because it's plastic. So I used a set of water pump pliers because that's what I had available, and very gently just twisted this loose without clamping down and without damaging any of those ridges, because if you crack one of these you will battle to find a replacement, so be careful with that. And just to show you inside this pedal, see the bearings, and I'm guessing that is factory grease because it's old, and as old as what it is, no binding at all on that pedal. Lovely smooth bearing. But we don't do half jobs, so we're going to pull it apart, give it fresh grease before we start the cleanup. And that's a wrap on the pedals. So they turned out quite nicely. Running even better than before with fresh grease, obviously. I spent some time polishing them up. Looking pretty slick now. Just waiting on a new set of toe straps because one was missing. So I'll try to find a matching pair for them. Managed to bend the one straight that was slightly bent, looking a bit better now as well. So if you've enjoyed this video, consider giving my channel a subscribe and smash that like button, please. It helps with these YouTube algorithms to get people pointed to the channel. And in the next video of this build, I think we've got 2 to go. The next one I'll cover the respraying of the frame and the fork, as well as taking this profile saddle in and having it tidied up. We're still in 2 minds whether we're going to try and save this, which I'm not sure is going to be possible, or if we're just going to have it covered in some new leather. But you'll see what happens there in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching. Keep well. Cheers.